This year, we are pleased to introduce a new topic to the lineup. Joining us today to talk about the lodging sector, a vital sector in the Hampton Roads economy, is Edward Denton. Ed is president of Denton Realty Company. Last year at this time, Ed suggested to Andy Hance that we have a market review lodging report. The next thing he knows, he's working on a report and he's up here on the stage. Careful what you wish for, Ed.
Thanks for the introduction, Larry. You know, for some reason, since like fourth grade, I've been that guy who makes a comment, and the next thing you know, you got a new homework assignment. Here we are again. Thank you to Andy for having me here today and for adding the lodging component to this presentation. It might be a quarter century late, but better late than never. So anyhow, before we get into the presentation, I want to just cover one quick definition that's important for those of you that don't follow the lodging business. I'm going to use this terminology a lot. So we talk a lot about RevPAR in the hotel business, which is revenue per available room. So you often hear about people talking occupancy and average daily rate. RevPAR is by definition the factor of those two things together. And it's a great sort of level playing field when you're comparing different markets or hotels or whatever your sample is. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Virginia Beach is the regional leader in RevPAR. This shouldn't come as a big surprise because, of course, we've got the resort area down there, which is highly seasonal and drives very strong average rates during the summer. And so it won't come as a big surprise that they are the leader in RevPAR for the entire Hampton Roads market. How does that compare to the rest of the market? This is average rate and occupancy comparing the United States, the state of Virginia, and then we lump together Chesapeake and Suffolk, Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and then Virginia Beach and Williamsburg stand on their own. As noted, Virginia Beach has the strongest average rate at $130 and change, slightly above the national average and significantly above the state average in all the other submarkets. Williamsburg is the notable loser, if you will, in occupancy, unfortunately at 49.5% occupancy in the Williamsburg market. It's really hard to make money in the hotel business at 49% occupancy. Having said that, they have somewhat respectable rate for this region at $121. Other notes from this slide, Chesapeake-Suffolk market is the leader in occupancy at 72%, and then the the Hampton-Newport News area is the lowest average rate for the region at $73, and we'll talk a little bit more about why that might be in a few minutes. So how does that compare to prior years? A lot more heads in beds. Hoteliers, like a lot of the other folks you've heard speak, hoteliers are feeling good about where we are in the market right now. Everyone was up in 2018 compared to 2017 in RevPAR growth, all of those market segments in Hampton Roads. Here's a quick chart showing the year-over-year RevPAR change. Virginia Beach was the only one of the submarkets that did not grow in both rate and occupancy. They grew rate, and then they grew it enough to offset the decline in occupancy, so they still had a positive RevPAR growth last year, and they're still the market leader in RevPAR. But the other markets had both rate and occupancy growth, and as you can see, had a great year in 2018. How does that compare to the last few years since the downturn, if you will? Well, pretty phenomenal growth over the last 4 years. This chart shows 2014 compared to 2018 annualized RevPAR for each of our submarkets in Hampton Roads. If you look at those percent change numbers, they're astronomical, they're huge. All of them north of 30% except for Virginia Beach, which is still a very strong 22%. Compare these to the national average percent change in the same 4-year period of 16%. Let that sink in for a second. I think there's a direct correlation on the growth you've seen in the last 4 years to what Dr. Agarwal was talking about in government spending in Hampton Roads. So what does that lead to? A very active transaction environment in the lodging sector. You got strong fundamentals, you got a rocket ride growth over the last 4 years, Buyers continue to be optimistic, though, about the future, and sellers are capitalizing on that rising tide. So there's traditional buy-sell transactions, there's major renovations going on, value-add investments, and development as well. Last year in 2018, there were 20 hotels sold in Hampton Roads. They ranged in price from $925,000, yes, for the whole hotel, to $76.5 million for that Hilton at the oceanfront. The deal of the year in the lodging sector for 2018 was the Hilton Garden Inn and the Hilton at the oceanfront in Virginia Beach. Doug Hinkle represented PHR Gold Key in that transaction. It was a $126.5 million deal for the two hotels. They were sold to Shameen Hotels out of Richmond, which is a behemoth owner-operator in the Mid-Atlantic. Other transactions ranged in per key is another measure that we look at in the transaction environment. So that ranged from $14,000 per unit sales price all the way to $300,000 a unit, which would have been the Hilton Garden Inn. The average transaction price was $14 million, but a median of only $5.5 million. So clearly a lot of transactions happening in that lower price range to pull down the median number. Included in those were a number of value-add transactions, as I mentioned. In addition to the package deal for the Hilton Garden Inn and the Hilton, PHR Gold Key also sold their Ramada on 6th Street in an off-market transaction. The last time I went by that hotel a few weeks ago, it was completely wrapped in plastic and undergoing a major renovation of some sort. In addition to that, Lingerfeld Commonwealth Partners out of Richmond purchased the old Virginia Beach Resort and Conference Center at the intersection of Shore Drive and Great Neck Road. They paid $19 million for the hotel, which historically was operated as a non-franchised, independent, and condo hotel structure. They're going to put $25 million into that asset, more than they paid to buy it, and they're going to rebrand it as a Delta by Marriott Hotel. In addition, that deal, at the end of the day, they'll be all in at $150,000 a unit for that property. Compare that to a replacement cost of about $300,000 a unit or more. So a great value-add investment for them, and we'll see how that impacts that Shore Drive corridor, which has always sort of struggled in Virginia Beach compared to the oceanfront area. Other major value-add transactions, the Crown Plaza in Hampton is going to be converted to a Tapestry by Hilton, which is one of their boutique flags. That's another Shameen deal. And then the Waterside Marriott, which transacted in 2017, is undergoing a major renovation, which is great for Norfolk. We'll add some additional high-end inventory to complement the main. That project is underway right now, and they're in the middle of renovations. So things are going well for the lodging industry. Owners are happy, and they're making a lot of money. But that's not to say they don't have some challenges. As I mentioned earlier, when we were looking at the rate and occupancy statistics, the rate in Hampton Roads is challenged by per diem. So on the one hand, the government and the government contractors are a great demand generator, and they provide tremendous base of business. On the other hand, the rate that they're willing to pay is set by the federal government at the per diem level, and that's naturally below market. And so it drags down the overall market rates. The lodging business has got plenty of challenges in the labor sector, both on recruiting management and hourly staff and retaining them. The cost of benefits continues to increase. But probably the number one topic of discussion the last few years in the hotel business has been Airbnb and other short-term rentals companies, but Airbnb is the behemoth. It's got a market value bigger than Marriott and Hilton combined. The interesting thing about this, it's not that hoteliers are afraid of competition. It's that what's really got them up in arms is a whole onslaught of unregulated competition in an industry that's highly regulated. So I have some data to share that's pretty interesting. I borrowed this slide from Dr. Agarwal. As you can see from this, in 2014, Airbnb represented a negligible market share in Hampton Roads. And it's grown exponentially over the last 4 years. During that same time frame that I was mentioning, we've had this recovery. Airbnb now controls almost 6% of the total revenue in Hampton Roads lodging. So what does that mean? Well, 6% of the total Hampton Roads revenue equates to about $60 million. So take that same $60 million and divide it by the roughly 37,000 hotel rooms in Hampton Roads. And if you took that same $60 million and just spread it between the existing inventory, that's $4 growth in RevPAR for every hotel in the market, over $4. If you took that same $60 million and you said, hey, how many hotels could that support? Well, the typical select service, Courtyard by Marriott, a Hampton Inn, something like that, they generate anywhere between $2 million and $5 million a year in revenue, roughly. So take 60 million, do the math, you could build 15 hotels with the Airbnb revenue and support them every year, and it's growing exponentially. So Airbnb is a big deal. It's having a material impact, perhaps more of one than anyone really realizes because the data is very hard to get to. They don't share it like most others in the industry do, so it's been a big factor. But that's okay. We still have a very, very robust development pipeline in Hampton Roads. While Airbnb has certainly been a factor, nobody's really scared of it, so to speak. As I mentioned, strong fundamentals and a lot of optimism are driving development. These brands are all coming to a neighborhood near you. The full-service Marriott at the oceanfront is under construction. If you've been to the Cavalier, you've seen the new tower going up. That will be a Marriott. At Town Center in Virginia Beach, the Residence Inn by Marriott is under construction on the Bonnie Road side of Town Center. The Hyatt Place is under construction on the Pembroke Office Park side of Town Center. And the Fairfield Inn and Suites by Marriott has been approved in Town Center and will be under construction this year, I believe. I mentioned the Tapestry, which is going to Hampton on the waterfront, the Delta at Shore Drive on the waterfront, and the Element, which is opening soon at the Peninsula Town Center. There's a couple I think I missed also at the Norfolk Airport that aren't on this slide, but there's additional hotels planned in that market as well. So what's the outlook for 2019? Most hoteliers are budgeting 2 to 5% growth in revenue for this year. They're active buyers and selectively building in areas where it makes sense. Certainly construction cost has tampered the amount of development, but there's still sites available and activity as you just saw on the last slide. We've seen modest cap rate growth and certainly very strong demand for investment sales across everything from economy properties to very high-end luxury properties. And finally, there's a lot of enthusiasm, particularly in Virginia Beach, the new sports center that's under construction right across from the convention center. And the initial projections about that on the Victus study said it was going to generate approximately 20,000 incremental room nights. The latest I've heard in the conversation and discussions is maybe up to 100,000 room nights they're expecting that to generate every year. So that'll have a material impact on Virginia Beach and hopefully in this non-peak season times, the spring and fall and winter. And if you read the paper this morning, the other big news going on at the beach is Something in the Water Festival, which is being planned by Pharrell Williams. Russell Lyons was quoted as saying that he thought it was going to be as big as 4th of July weekend. That's saying something in Virginia Beach. 4th of July is by far the biggest weekend they have at the oceanfront. So a couple of very exciting things happening, particularly in Virginia Beach. And with that, I'd turn it back over to Larry. Thank you very much.